I never really had a place to go back to. Sure, I had family, a mom, a dad, two sisters, but my mom had my older sister, Amanda, when she was just 18, and almost 11 years later, she had a baby boy who that loss broke her. She got pregnant again, probably hoping for another boy, but it was my middle sister, Rachel. And then came me, right in the middle of a financial disaster. My dad ran a small trucking business with his brother, but they fell out badly, and overnight, everything went down the drain. That's when my mom found out she was pregnant with me. No money, no stability, no plan. From the start, I wasn't really wanted, and somehow I could always feel it. I was sick all the time. As a baby, pneumonia, tonsillitis, you name it, so my mom became overprotective, smothering me to the point she forgot Rachel even existed. Rachel stopped talking for months after I was born. So while my mom rejected me before I was born, she clung to me once I was here. That was the contradiction I carried with me my whole life, the rejected child who was spoiled at the same time. I was the kind of kid who threw tantrums, but still longed for love. My parents never really fought in front of us. The only thing I remember is the constant lack of money. My dad drank. He was an alcoholic, just like my uncle who lived with us. Our house always smelled like beer and unpaid bills. I never had what other kids had, no new clothes, no family trips, no dad who slipped me $20 to go out on weekends. My aunts would show up with bags of groceries like they were rescuing us. Even my grandma on my dad's side, well, the woman he called mom after losing his own when he was just 11, tried to help, but all of that never filled the hole. I grew up in a tiny working class town in Ohio where my family's name meant something. My grandfather and great-grandfather even have streets named after them. But all that legacy didn't pay the bills. Trauma ran through our family like blood through veins. My dad's father was murdered by his own brother during a bar fight. My mom's mom died of cancer when she was 7, and her dad remarried a woman from their strict Pentecostal church. So, faith and guilt were mixed into everything. I learned early that my dad's drinking and my mom's sadness were just part of life. By the time I was a teenager, I'd seen enough to know I'd have to take care of myself. I wasn't the girl who got handed pocket money. I babysat, bagged groceries, did whatever I could. My older sister, Amanda, got married young and sometimes had to help feed us too. It made me sick. Even as a kid, I hated that we always needed help. So when I started dating, I went looking for something to fix. My first serious boyfriend was drop-dead gorgeous, 6'4", broad shoulders, charming as hell, but he was controlling as hell too. When I tried to break up with him after a year together, he showed up at my house in the middle of the night, dragged me outside in my pajamas, threw me into his car, and screamed at me the whole time. He smashed my little flip phone and dumped me on the side of the road, half naked. My mom was frantic. We went to the police, got a restraining order, and that was that. I never saw him again. But the damage stayed. I was 22, jobless, broken. And that's when I met Nathan. He worked at a small family-owned bakery with my sister Rachel. I was picking up my unemployment check one Friday afternoon and stopped by the bakery to wait for her shift to end so we could ride the bus home together. And there he was, standing at the top of the stairs, wiping flour off his hands. I swear to God, I thought he was the owner's son or something. When Rachel came out, she said, "Nathan asked about you. He was just the bakery manager, but he had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room." I didn't want to date anyone. I told him that when he called our house phone later that night, but he made me laugh. He made me feel safe, like I wouldn't have to worry about how much gas was in the tank or whether there'd be dinner on the table. And after the chaos I just escaped, I mistook that for love. I didn't know then that safe could turn out to be a cage. Nathan was so different from any guy I'd ever dated. He didn't come from money, far from it, but he always looked like he had things handled. He had his own small house in a modest neighborhood outside of Dayton, Ohio. It wasn't fancy, but to me it felt like a castle compared to what I'd grown up with. We'd spend weekends there, curled up on his beat-up old couch, eating takeout pizza, pretending we were building something real. I fell fast. He opened the car door for me, paid for my food without complaining, made sure the gas tank was full. I laugh at that now because back then those tiny gestures felt like proof he was good, that he was stable, but they were crumbs. I see that now, crumbs for a starving girl. Nathan worked days managing the bakery and nights doing appliance repairs. His dad had always fixed washing machines for a living, and Nathan thought he'd expand on that by learning refrigeration. He was smart, good with his hands, and people trusted him, and he loved telling people how important he was. I remember once he came to pick me up for a date, pacing on the sidewalk, fake talking on the phone about some big job. He didn't see that I knew it was an act that I heard the line go dead. But I brushed it off. Poor guy, trying to impress me. I wish I'd paid attention to that first lie. There were so many more. Around that time, I found my own spark. I'd always been good with my hands. My sister used to say I gave the best manicures in the family. So when a local nail tech asked if I'd help out over Christmas and New Year's, Nathan actually encouraged me. At first, anyway. He liked telling people I was his girl who worked in the best salon in town with all those doctors' wives and lawyers coming in for their weekly touch-ups. I got good, really good. Word spread fast, and before I knew it, I was making decent money. Enough to dream about getting my own place, maybe even saving up for a used car. But Nathan liked to keep a short leash. Every time I mentioned wanting something for myself, he'd remind me how much he'd done for me, how I should be grateful. So I learned to swallow my wants. Nathan's family was part of a tiny, old-fashioned church, the kind where women wore skirts below the knee and never cut their hair. When he first took me to meet his parents, I was terrified they'd judge me. I didn't own a single long skirt, didn't know how to play the good church girl, but they acted like they adored me, at least to my face. His dad, a gruff man who liked to remind everyone who paid the bills, leaned into the car window as we were leaving one Sunday and said, "Got myself a lawyer, son. Next, I need a dentist for a daughter-in-law." I was so stunned, I just laughed it off. But inside, I felt that sting that I'd never be good enough for them no matter what I did. Nathan brushed it off too, telling me his dad didn't know how to talk to people. He didn't, but Nathan knew exactly how to push buttons. By then, I was practically living at Nathan's place. He'd started his own repair business, so he asked me to quit the salon and come work for him full time. He made it sound like freedom. No more toxic coworkers, no more split tips, just us side by side building something together. But it wasn't a partnership, it was his empire, and I was just free labor. He told me to pack my bags, leave my mom's house for good, and move in with him. Said it would be our home. But the truth was, I was just a live-in receptionist, a cook, a maid. When I asked him for money to help my parents with the bills they still struggled to pay, he snapped. "If you're under my roof, you don't owe them anything anymore. This is your family now." I should have run right then. I didn't. I wanted so badly to believe this was it, my new start, my happy ending. The first few months living with Nathan felt like playing house. I kept telling myself it was what real love looked like. Sharing a roof, building a business, laughing over takeout. But those sweet moments were laced with tiny humiliations I ignored because I didn't want to see the truth. One day, I found a stray kitten near our driveway. I'd always loved cats. I grew up with them, and I felt this spark of joy I hadn't felt in a long time. I brought the little thing inside, hoping Nathan would melt the way I did. Instead, he yelled at me for bringing a dirty animal into his house. The kitten was sick, and by the next morning, it was gone. I buried it myself, tears mixing with the dirt. That day, he hugged me and said, "Go on then, get yourself another cat if you want." Like he was handing me a piece of freedom I should be grateful for, I named my new kitten Lily. She was my tiny piece of hope. Nathan had a way of making me feel like everything was my fault. If he snapped at me in front of his family, he'd smooth it over later with jokes. "You know how I get when I'm stressed," he'd say, as if that excused everything. His dad would butt in sometimes too, a man who wore his faith on his sleeve but never missed a chance to belittle me. One day after Sunday lunch, his dad looked at me and said, "You know, Nathan already gave me a lawyer for a son. Next, I just need a dentist for a daughter-in-law." I shot back, "Well, the day you find one, let me know so I can pack my bags." Nathan was furious that I embarrassed him, but deep down I was proud I didn't swallow my tongue. I never should have stayed after the first time he laid his hands on Lily. We'd gotten into an argument, something petty, like me asking for a new cabinet because the old one was falling apart. He stormed upstairs while I was sitting on the bed, hugging Lily for comfort. He ripped her out of my arms and threw her across the room. She hit the wall with a dull thud. I cried harder for that cat than I ever had for myself. He stopped yelling when he saw my tears, mumbling apologies, blaming his temper. I should have packed up and left right then, but I didn't. I told myself it was a one-off, just stress. Work only made it worse. His business was growing because of me. I took all the calls, did the bookkeeping, even handled clients when he overslept after drinking. Nathan would brag to anyone who'd listen that he was the breadwinner, the hardworking man. Meanwhile, I didn't even have a salary. We have to reinvest in the company, he'd say, whenever I asked about getting paid. So I'd paint nails on the side, squeezing in appointments in our kitchen, or sneaking out to do house calls for cash. The money I made on my own, that was my lifeline. It bought me a cheap pair of boots when the first winter in that house hit hard. Nathan told me we couldn't afford luxuries. Boots are a luxury now? I asked. He didn't answer. He just slammed the door. Looking back, it's so clear how he stripped me of everything: my job, my family, my independence. He loved that I needed him. The more dependent I was, the tighter he gripped. And still, somewhere inside me, I kept hoping he'd change. That all his promises about the future, the trips, the house renovations, the baby we'd have one day would finally come true. But in Nathan's world, dreams were just a leash. I don't know exactly when the hope started to die, but I remember the night I realized my life wasn't mine anymore. It was winter. The house felt colder than ever, not because of the weather, but because Nathan's moods had turned into a silent storm I could never predict. He'd disappear into the garage for hours, claiming he was working on big deals, but half the time he'd just sit in his truck drinking alone. He'd come back inside reeking of cheap beer, slump on the couch, and throw questions at me like they were knives. Why is this bill so high? Who did you talk to today? Why are you wearing that shirt? His jealousy made no sense, yet he made me feel like I was always the one messing up. The worst part was that I believed him. I'd spent so long telling myself he was the one good thing in my life, the one person who saved me from my miserable childhood. It took me years to see that all he really saved me from was freedom. The only time I felt like myself was when I was working as a nail tech. My tiny circle of regulars, the sweet older ladies, the young moms who needed a moment to breathe, they were my escape. They'd tip me extra because they knew I didn't see a dime from Nathan's business. One of my clients offered to help me rent a tiny studio apartment so I could take more clients on the side, but Nathan found out. He called me ungrateful, said if I ever pulled a stunt like that again, I'd be out on the street. That was always the threat, that I'd have nothing and no one. Deep down, I still feared that might be true. And then there was the church. Nathan had grown up in a tight-knit evangelical church his whole life. He never really cared about it until he found out his brother was a deacon there playing music during Sunday service. Suddenly, Nathan needed to be better than him. So he joined the worship team, learned to play the trombone, and got baptized, not because faith moved him, but because ego did. He'd stand there at the front of the church, eyes closed, pretending to be someone holy. Meanwhile, he'd spend Saturday nights at home yelling at me, then show up at church on Sunday like he was a saint. He even convinced me we needed to make things right with God and have a wedding. It wasn't love, it was a performance. We'd been living together for years, but now that he wanted to play the role of the perfect husband in front of the congregation, we had to have a ceremony. I remember the morning of my wedding like it was yesterday. I woke up with a panic attack so bad I thought I would die before I got down the aisle. I called everyone I could think of, begging them to tell me not to do it. Nobody did. They said, "You're just nervous." But I knew I was about to sign my life away. I was 28 years old, standing in front of an altar, promising myself to a man who'd spent years breaking me down bit by bit. I remember my mother's voice echoing in my head. "You should be grateful. He works hard. He's a good man. But a good man doesn't strip you of your family, your money, your freedom. A good man doesn't smash your phone, throw your cat, or spit words like poison into your ear until you think you're worthless." That day, I put on a white dress and told myself I could survive anything. I didn't realize how many more pieces of myself I'd lose before I found the strength to walk away. After the wedding, I tried to convince myself that a ring would fix everything, that now that we were official, Nathan would soften, that maybe the church would make him better. But the reality was, the ring just made him bolder. It made him feel like he owned me, like I was locked in for good. Nathan's business kept growing, mostly because I ran every single thing behind the scenes. I woke up before dawn to open the gate for his workers. I brewed coffee, filed the paperwork, managed the calls and orders. I learned how to handle invoices when we still did everything by hand, then taught myself how to do it all digitally when things got bigger. But there was no paycheck with my name on it. "We can't afford it yet," he'd say. Once we get ahead, you'll see your cut. The only thing that grew was his ego. I remember one winter I begged him for a new kitchen cabinet. The old one was falling apart. He told me there was no money for stupid things like that, yet somehow he always had money to upgrade his truck or buy tools for the shop. The only time I ever got something new was when I bought it myself with cash from the nails I did on the side. I saved every tip to buy a cheap wardrobe and a secondhand kitchen set. And you know what? Nathan took the credit, told everyone he'd bought them for me. It was always about the story he told people, never the truth. I'd see other women post pictures online showing off vacations, dinners, shopping bags. I was so ashamed of myself for wanting even a piece of that because I had food on the table, right? I had a roof. What more do you want? He'd ask when I hinted at anything extra. If I pressed, he'd snap, slam a door. Or worse, he'd go silent for days, leaving me to tiptoe around the house, desperate to win him back to normal. Our vacations were supposed to be our reward for working so hard. But the truth is, they were a circus. I'd pack his bags, make the sandwiches, double-check the route. If anything went wrong, it was my fault. Once, on a trip to the beach in Florida, I got my period unexpectedly. Nathan glared at me in the grocery store while I picked out tampons like I'd ruined his perfect weekend on purpose. I spent the whole trip feeling guilty for something I couldn't control, sitting on the sand pretending I was fine while he sulked under the umbrella. It wasn't just the big things that hurt, it was the 1,000 tiny humiliations that ate me alive. Like the time I took a sip from his soda at a family barbecue and he snapped, "If you're going to drink mine, at least refill it." Everyone laughed awkwardly, but the shame burned into my skin. Or how he'd brag about my cooking in front of his friends, then mock me if I asked him to take me out somewhere nice. "We got food at home," he'd say. "Why waste money?" Sometimes late at night, I'd lie awake beside him, wondering what it would take to finally feel like I deserved better. I didn't dare say it out loud that I was tired, lonely, desperate for kindness. Because even when he was cruel, there were days he'd still be the man who opened my car door and told me he loved me. And I'd cling to those crumbs like they were a feast. It's funny, the lies you tell yourself when you're trapped. Mine was simple, maybe tomorrow will be different. There were days when I tried to remind myself that Nathan was once the man who made me laugh on the phone that first night. But that version of him was long gone. The longer I stayed, the clearer it became that his control ran deeper than any locked door or empty bank account it was, the way he convinced me I was lucky to have him at all. He liked to remind me where I came from. "You were nothing before me," he'd say when I'd push back about money or work. "You think your family would help you? You'd crawl right back to that dump you called home." I hated how much of that I believed. I kept trying to keep something for myself, a little light in the darkness. My cats, my side work, my tiny nail kit hidden in a drawer. I'd take clients in our kitchen while Nathan was out on repair calls. It was the only time I felt in control. The money from that bought my shampoo, my makeup, even my underwear. He hated that I did nails, said it was trashy, that his wife didn't need to hustle for cash. But he never minded when I used that money to pay bills he didn't want to see. I don't know why the religion piece hurt so much, but it did. Nathan kept using church like a mask he could put on and off whenever it suited him. He'd stand at the front on Sundays playing his trombone like he was born holy. People would clap him on the back, tell him what a good man he was for bringing me along. They had no clue that just a few hours earlier, he'd cornered me in our kitchen because I didn't cook his eggs the way he liked. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of myself in the bathroom mirror, the same sad eyes I'd had as a kid, and think, this is it. This is all I'll ever be, the girl who lives in someone else's house, using someone else's money, praying for someone else's approval. I tried to have a baby like that would fix us, like it would soften him. We did tests, spent what little money I could scrape together on treatments. I had endometriosis and the doctor said it would be hard. Nathan refused to pay for anything. "If God wants us to have kids, we will," he said. But deep down, I knew he didn't want them not with me. When the last round of medication failed, I lay awake for nights, pressing my hands to my empty belly, wondering what was worse, that I couldn't have a baby, or that I still thought one might save me. The control only got tighter. Nathan tracked every penny I spent. He even watched what food I bought for my cats. He'd remind me, "This house, this car, all this, it's mine. You walk out that door, you're nothing." Sometimes he'd sweeten the poison with fake generosity. One afternoon, out of nowhere, he told me he was buying me a car. My heart jumped. I thought, Finally, a taste of freedom. But it came with a catch. You'll keep the old one for yourself, he said, so mine doesn't smell like cat hair in your cigarettes. It wasn't a gift. It was a way to keep me in line, like always. I'd watch other women at church, their eyes soft and full of faith, smiling beside husbands who seemed gentle. I wondered if they saw the way Nathan gripped my arm just a little too tight when he wanted me to shut up. If they heard the hiss in his voice when he leaned in close enough for only me to hear, "Don't you dare embarrass me." One night, I lay in bed and realized that the thing I feared most losing him was already happening. Piece by piece, he was letting go of me. Or maybe he was done playing nice. Maybe he knew he didn't need to pretend anymore. It wouldn't be long before I found out exactly how disposable I really was. Nathan's betrayals didn't happen all at once. They crept in slowly, like water seeping through a cracked foundation until the whole house rots from the inside out. I should have seen it coming, the late nights, the new cologne, the sudden sweetness that always felt a little too forced. But I was so desperate to hold on to the crumbs he tossed me that I ignored every red flag waving right in my face. It started with whispers. A friend of mine from the nail salon, Danielle, pulled me aside one afternoon and said, "Hey, I heard Nathan's been hanging around with that girl from church, the one who sings in the choir." I laughed it off. He'd never. Even as I said it, my stomach twisted. Deep down, I knew exactly who she meant. She was the soft-voiced, long-skirted type his mother always dreamed he'd marry. Then came the nights he wouldn't come home. Working late, he'd text. But our business was never busy enough to justify him staying out until 2 a.m. I'd sit on our battered couch, Lily curled in my lap, telling myself I was paranoid, telling myself a good wife doesn't question her husband, but my gut wouldn't shut up. One night, after he stumbled and reeking of cheap perfume, I finally asked. He smirked at me like I was an idiot. "If I wanted someone else, you'd be gone already," he said. I felt that line like a punch to the gut. I didn't sleep at all that night. I lay there next to him, his back turned to me, his breathing heavy with indifference, and I knew I was alone in that house even while he was right there. The betrayal didn't stop at the cheating. It was the money too. Our bank account bled dry while he spent hundreds on new tools, fancy dinners I never saw, and late night business meetings that never added up. When I asked about our bills, he'd say, "Figure it out. You're good at scraping by." By then, my side hustle doing nails was the only reason I could keep the lights on. My regulars tipped me cash that I hid in an old coffee can under the sink. I'd wait until Nathan was out working his fake jobs before I'd sneak out to buy cat food or a bottle of shampoo. I was 32 years old, hiding money like a teenager because my own husband made me feel like a thief in my own life. One Sunday, at church, the truth nearly choked me. I stood there next to him while he played trombone, eyes closed, the picture of a God-fearing man. People patted him on the back, praising him for his transformation. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and tell the entire congregation that the man they called brother had turned our home into a prison cell. But instead, I smiled and swallowed my shame. The final blow came when I found a receipt, a cheap motel out by the interstate. I confronted him that night, hands shaking. For once, he didn't lie. He just shrugged. "Yeah, so what? You gonna leave?" The casual cruelty in his voice made me realize what I should have known all along. He wasn't afraid of losing me. He knew I had nowhere to go. That's what abusers count on. Your silence, your shame, your fear of starting over with nothing. They know they've got you trapped. But that night, staring at him across our filthy kitchen table, I felt something crack inside me. I thought, maybe I have nothing, but I still have myself. I didn't know how I'd do it yet, how I'd get out, where I'd go, who would believe me, but I knew this. I was done being his prisoner. Leaving Nathan wasn't a clean break. It never is with men like him, men who wrap their hands around your life so tightly you forget how to breathe on your own. The night I told him I was done, he didn't yell. He didn't even flinch. He just leaned back in his chair, smiled that cold smile, and said, "You won't last a week without me." For a while, I believed him. I packed a single duffel bag while he sat on the couch, flipping through television channels like I was just background noise. He didn't even bother to help or stop me. That's how sure he was that I'd come crawling back, and for a moment, so was I. I went straight to my sister Amanda's place. She and her husband took me in without questions, just made up the pull-out couch and told me to sleep. but sleep never came. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Nathan's voice in my head. You were nothing before me. You'll be nothing after me. I lay there that first night, clutching my pillow like a lifeline, reminding myself I was free, except I didn't feel free. I felt homeless, jobless, broken. Amanda and her husband helped me find a cheap room in a rundown part of town. It wasn't much, one tiny window, peeling paint, a shared bathroom down the hall, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I had a door I could lock. And yet, when I lay on that sagging twin mattress, I wondered what the hell I'd just done. I'd lost my home, my work, my so-called husband all in one blow. My cats were all I had left. I'd left them with Amanda until I could scrape together a pet deposit. Every time I visited, they'd curl up in my lap like they knew I needed them more than ever. Nathan had tried to get rid of them, said they were a waste of money. But they were mine. And I clung to that like a promise that I could still keep something safe. I got a job at a small nail studio downtown, working 12-hour shifts, eating ramen noodles in the back room between clients. Every dollar I made went to rent, cat food, and a secondhand car that rattled when I drove it. Some nights I'd sit in that cold little room, counting tips and telling myself that survival was enough, that maybe someday survival would feel like living. Nathan didn't make it easy. He'd drive by my building, text my sister that he missed me, post Bible verses on Facebook like he was the victim. He told anyone who'd listen that I'd lost my mind. But he never said the part about the bruises on my heart or how he spent our money on cheap motels and pretty girls from church who had no clue who he really was. He even tried to pull me back once, showed up at the studio with flowers, the cheap kind from the gas station. Come home, he whispered. We can start over. You know you can't do this alone. I looked him dead in the eyes and said, watch me. I'd love to say I walked out of that parking lot feeling powerful, but the truth is, I cried all the way home. Not because I missed him, but because I finally knew I never would again. I thought freedom would feel like a sunrise. But the truth is, sometimes it's just a flickering street lamp on a dark road reminding you to keep going one shaky step at a time. Freedom didn't fix everything overnight. Nobody tells you that part. Some days, I still wake up reaching for scars I can't see but feel all the same. There are nights when his words echo in my head, whispering that I'll never be enough, that I'm still the same broken girl he found. But when that voice comes, I remind myself of everything I've rebuilt with my own two hands. I stayed at Amanda's longer than I planned, just until I could get a place with enough space for my cats and my nail kit. When I finally signed the lease on my first tiny apartment, just one bedroom, old hardwood floors, and windows that let in the morning sun, I stood in the middle of that empty room and cried like a child. It wasn't much, but it was mine. No one could take it away from me. The old clients who loved me stuck by me. They came to my new studio, paid in cash, tipped more than they needed to. Sometimes they brought coffee or secondhand furniture for my place. It felt like the world saying, you might have nothing, but you're not nothing. That's what Nathan never understood. Real love isn't about owning someone. It's about lifting them up when they're too tired to stand on their own. Somewhere along the way, I met someone new. Not a savior, just a man with his own cracks and bruises. He never promised to fix me, and I never asked him to. When I told him about my past, about Nathan, about the fear that still lives under my ribs, he didn't call me broken. He just held my hand and said, it's okay, we'll go slow. Some days I believe him. Some days I'm still learning how. I wish I could say I never think about Nathan, but sometimes I do, like when I drive past the neighborhood where we lived, or when I catch a glimpse of a church sign and feel that old taste of bitterness in my mouth. I wonder if he still tells people he saved me, let him, because the truth is the only person who ever saved me was me. I see now that survival wasn't the goal, it was just the first step. Living, really living, means taking back the parts of myself he tried to bury. It means laughing loud. It means painting my nails, whatever color I want. It means curling up with my cats on my thrift store couch in my tiny apartment, feeling the warmth of a place that's messy and mine. If you're reading this and you're still in the dark place, still telling yourself you can't do it alone, let me be your proof that you can. It won't be easy. It won't be fair. But you are stronger than the voices that try to keep you small. You are more than the worst thing you survived. Nathan told me I'd come crawling back. He said I'd be nothing without him. I'm proud to say he was wrong. I'm not nothing. I'm free. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and comment below. And if you have a story like this one you've been too afraid to tell, know that you're not alone. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story of strength, survival, and taking your life back. You deserve it.